Some houses are not just buildings, they are portals to the past, haunted by the echoes of tragedy, obsession, and restless spirits. Imagine walking through a mansion where staircases lead to nowhere, or a castle where shadows seem alive. Across the world, there are places where history refuses to rest, and every room hides a dark secret. In this video, we explore 5 most haunted houses on Earth and their dark history, stepping inside eerie forts, abandoned castles, and mysterious estates, uncovering the chilling tales that have kept generations awake at night. Dare to watch. If you're loving these spine-chilling stories, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you never miss more haunted adventures. 1. The Winchester Mystery House, California, USA. In the heart of San Jose, California, there stands a mansion that seems to defy logic and reason, a sprawling labyrinth of hallways, staircases that lead nowhere, and doors that open into walls. This is the Winchester Mystery House, a place where every corner seems alive with whispers from the past, where the air itself feels thick with the presence of history and perhaps something beyond the ordinary. Walking up to the estate, I could feel an inexplicable pull, a strange mixture of curiosity and unease. The ornate Victorian exterior, with its intricate woodwork and sprawling porches, belied the strange and eerie interior that awaited within. I had read about Sarah Winchester and her obsession with spirits, but nothing could prepare me for the sensation of actually being there, stepping over the threshold into a world built from grief, superstition, and relentless determination. Sarah Lockwood Pardee Winchester was a woman shaped by loss. Born in 1839, she married William Wirt Winchester, heir to the Winchester repeating arms fortune, and together they had a daughter, Annie, whose life ended tragically at just 6 weeks old. Sarah's grief compounded when her husband succumbed to tuberculosis, leaving her a wealthy widow at a time when women were rarely the masters of their own destinies. The pain of these losses drove her to seek answers, solace, and perhaps a form of atonement. Legend has it that she consulted a medium who told her that the spirits of those who had died by Winchester rifles were restless and that she must build a house to appease them. Whether legend or truth, what emerged from Sarah's vision was a home unlike any other, a place that seems to embody both her sorrow and her relentless ingenuity. When Sarah purchased a modest farmhouse in 1884, she began what would become a decades-long construction project, continuing until her death in 1922. The house grew with each passing year, eventually boasting over 160 rooms, 47 fireplaces, 17 chimneys, and more than 2,000 doors. Every corner, every hallway seemed to tell a story. Staircases climbed to ceilings, doors opened into walls, and windows overlooked other rooms rather than the outside world. It was as if the house itself was a maze, a protective cocoon to confuse spirits and perhaps anyone who entered with intentions Sarah could not anticipate. As I wandered through these corridors, I felt a strange vertigo, the disorientation of moving through a place where conventional rules of architecture did not apply. The feeling of being watched, of stepping into spaces that had been shaped by someone who believed in unseen forces, was both unsettling and captivating. Sarah lived in the house with her niece, Marion Daisy Merriman, and a team of carpenters who worked tirelessly under her guidance. She reportedly slept in a different room each night, perhaps to evade spirits or simply to ensure she was never trapped in the same pattern of thought or movement. Nightly seances were held to communicate with the dead, guiding her hand as she directed construction. Each decision, from the placement of a stair to the direction of a hallway, seemed informed by both grief and an abiding desire to create a sanctuary for herself among the restless. Standing in one of the oddly shaped parlors, I imagined her pacing these same floors, consulting with unseen forces, making minute adjustments in her obsessive effort to honor both the living and the dead. Visitors today speak of strange experiences that mirror what Sarah herself might have felt. Cold spots appear without warning, doors creak open or slam shut, and shadows seem to linger just at the edge of vision. Some claim to have seen figures gliding through hallways, faint glimpses of a woman in a long dress, perhaps Sarah herself, eternally tending to her labyrinthine creation. I felt a similar chill as I moved from room to room, a sensation that was hard to explain but impossible to ignore. The house seems alive in ways that transcend human understanding, a physical manifestation of one woman's psyche, haunted not just by spirits, but by the cumulative weight of grief, wealth, and obsessive attention to detail. As I explored the grand hallways, I realized the house was more than a haunted spectacle. It was a testament to Sarah Winchester's resilience, creativity, and the extremes of human emotion. The architectural oddities, the endless construction, and the attention to detail all reflect a mind consumed by loss yet determined to act, to create, and to leave a mark upon the world. It is not just the ghost stories that make this place remarkable, but the very real history of a woman grappling with tragedy and channeling her pain into a living, breathing structure that continues to captivate all who enter. Exiting the mansion, I felt a mix of relief and awe. The sunlight seemed sharper, the outside world more ordinary, yet the mansion had left an indelible impression. It is not just a house, but a chronicle of grief, hope, obsession, and mystery. To walk through the Winchester Mystery House is to step into someone else's mind, to witness grief transformed into creation, fear transformed into structure, and superstition transformed into a labyrinth that has endured for more than a century. Whether one believes in ghosts or not, the experience leaves an undeniable sense that some things in life, some intentions, some emotions, can manifest in ways far beyond what we expect. The Winchester Mystery House is living proof of this, a place where history, human emotion, and the unknown converge, leaving every visitor with a story of their own to tell. 2 Bangor Fort, Rajasthan, India. As I approached the Bangor Fort in Rajasthan, India, the sun was beginning its slow descent, casting long shadows across the ancient stone walls. The fort, perched atop a rocky hill and surrounded by dense forest, exuded an eerie stillness that made my skin crawl. Every step along the uneven path seemed to echo with whispers from centuries past, and the air was thick with an almost tangible sense of foreboding. Locals often warned visitors not to linger after sunset, and as I looked at the looming gates, I could understand why. The fort has long been called one of the most haunted places in India, and as I stepped through the arched entryway, it felt as though I had crossed a threshold into another world, a place where history and legend intertwine so completely that one cannot tell fact from myth. Bangor Fort was constructed in the 17th century by Raja Madho Singh, and it flourished as a thriving settlement with temples, palaces, and residential quarters. However, the fort's prosperity was overshadowed by a story of love, betrayal, and a curse that has survived through generations. According to local legend, a wizard fell in love with the beautiful Princess Ratnavati, but she rejected his advances. Angry and humiliated, the wizard cursed the fort so that it would never prosper, a curse that seemingly doomed the settlement to ruin. Walking through the ruins, it was easy to see how imagination and reality blend. The crumbling walls, overgrown with vines, and the silent temples created a sense of desolation that seemed almost alive. As I wandered among the deserted structures, I imagined the daily lives of the people who once inhabited this fort, the merchants, soldiers, and families, living under the shadow of both political intrigue and supernatural fear. The temples, though now partially in ruins, retain an aura of solemnity, and I could almost hear the distant chants of priests from centuries ago. The forest surrounding the fort added to the haunting atmosphere, the rustle of leaves and the occasional screech of birds echoing eerily, making every shadow seem like it was watching. Visitors today report hearing whispers, seeing fleeting shadows, or feeling sudden drops in temperature, especially near the temples and the fort's perimeter walls. Standing near one of the main gates, I could not shake off the sensation that someone, or something, was observing my every move. Despite the chilling legends, Bangor Fort remains an architectural marvel. The design of the fort and its surrounding structures reflects meticulous planning, with fortified walls, secret escape routes, and temples built with intricate stone carvings. Yet the decaying stones and abandoned corridors tell the story of a place abandoned and haunted, where human ambition met its limits against both fate and folklore. The stories passed down by locals, combined with the undeniable isolation of the fort, create an atmosphere where the past feels vividly present. I could almost feel the weight of the centuries pressing down, and it became clear why this fort has inspired fear, fascination, and countless stories of paranormal activity. As I explored further, I found myself standing in what was once the main marketplace, surrounded by the silent remains of stone shops and homes. Imagining the vibrant life that once thrived here, the laughter of children, the calls of merchants, and the festivals held in honor of the deities, it was striking how completely desolate it now felt. And yet, there was an undeniable energy lingering in the air, a reminder that the fort, even in its ruins, was never truly empty. Locals still tell stories of shadowy figures, ghostly apparitions, and strange sounds at night, all adding to the fort's reputation as India's most haunted site. Even as a skeptic, I could not ignore the hair-raising sensation that came over me at various points, a mix of awe, fear, and respect for both the history and the legends embedded in every stone. Leaving the fort, the sun had almost disappeared behind the horizon, and the forests surrounding the hills seemed darker, more oppressive. The silence of the fort contrasted sharply with the bustling towns below, yet I felt a connection to the generations that had once walked these paths, carrying their fears, hopes, and lives under the looming shadow of the curse. Bangor Fort is more than a ruin, it is a living story, a place where human history, architecture, and the supernatural meet. It is a reminder that some places retain the energy of their past, haunting those who walk among them, and leaving visitors with memories that are as vivid as they are unsettling. By the time I descended the rocky path and returned to the road leading away from the fort, the sun had vanished completely, and the first stars appeared in the sky. Yet in my mind, Bangor Fort remained alive, a place where the echoes of history and legend merge, leaving an indelible impression on anyone who dares to enter. I could not help but feel that the fort had left a mark on me, not through fear alone, but through the profound realization that some histories, some tragedies, and some stories are never truly gone, they linger, waiting for those brave enough to witness them. 3 Poveglia Island, Italy. As I approached Poveglia Island, the small, isolated speck of land in the Venetian lagoon, an unsettling sense of anticipation gripped me. From afar, the island looked almost serene, quietly floating in the greenish waters, but as the boat drew closer, the air seemed to thicken, carrying whispers of centuries-old suffering. Stepping onto the cracked, moss-covered pier, I felt an eerie chill that had nothing to do with the cool breeze. There is something about this place that pulls you in, a mixture of morbid curiosity and unshakable apprehension, as if the island itself knows you have come to witness its dark past. Poveglia has long been known as one of the most haunted locations in the world, and standing there, it was easy to understand why. The island's history is steeped in tragedy. In the 18th century, it was designated as a quarantine zone for plague victims. Thousands were brought here, abandoned to suffer and die in isolation, their cries lost to the wind. Centuries later, the island became home to a mental asylum, where reports of mistreatment, experimental treatments, and unbearable conditions spread fear through the region. Walking among the ruins of crumbling buildings, I imagined the desperation and torment of those who had once lived, and perished, here. Each broken window, every decaying wall seemed to whisper a story of pain, loss, and anguish that had seeped into the very foundation of the island. Exploring the abandoned hospital, I noticed floors coated with decades of dust, cracked tiles, and rusted metal that creaked under my every step. The rooms, dark and empty, carried the faint echoes of lives once trapped within. I could almost see shadows flitting across the walls, fleeting glimpses that vanished when I tried to focus. The atmosphere was heavy, oppressive, yet hypnotic, compelling me to move further into the ruins despite the nagging fear at the back of my mind. Locals often warn that the spirits of the plague victims and tortured patients still linger, and it was not hard to imagine them wandering through the empty corridors, eternally trapped in their torment. At one point, I stood on the hill overlooking the lagoon, the sun casting long, eerie shadows across the island. The view was simultaneously beautiful and haunting. It was impossible not to reflect on the weight of human suffering embedded in this place. The air seemed to carry the whispers of forgotten souls, and I felt a strange connection to them, a shiver of empathy and unease that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. Visitors have reported hearing footsteps behind them when no one was there, feeling cold drafts in the middle of still air, or catching glimpses of shadowy figures that vanish when approached. Experiencing even a hint of this myself, I could see why so many consider Poveglia Island cursed. Every corner of the island seemed to tell a story. The crumbling walls of the hospital, the deserted watchtower, and the overgrown paths were more than ruins. They were monuments to tragedy, a physical record of lives lost and horrors endured. Walking through them, I imagined the despair of those who had been quarantined, the madness of those confined in the asylum, and the relentless isolation that defined the island for centuries. It was impossible not to feel a sense of reverence mixed with fear, an understanding that the echoes of the past were very much alive here, and that each stone carried memories of agony that had never faded. As I finally prepared to leave, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a fiery glow over the lagoon. The boat rocked gently as I looked back at the island, its dark silhouette a stark reminder of the human suffering it had witnessed. Even in the fading light, the sense of presence lingered. The feeling that Poveglia Island was watching, aware of those who dared to step onto its haunted grounds. Walking away, I realized that some places are more than just locations, they are living chronicles of history, pain, and the inexplicable, leaving a mark on anyone who comes near. Poveglia is not just haunted by stories, it is haunted by reality, and that is what makes it profoundly unsettling and unforgettable. For the Amityville House, New York, USA. As I approached the quiet suburban street of Amityville, New York, the house at 112 Ocean Avenue immediately stood out, not for its size or grandeur, but for an almost palpable sense of tension that seemed to radiate from within its walls. It looked like any other mid-century home, neat lawns, white siding, and large windows reflecting the afternoon sun, yet something about it felt profoundly off. Locals were hesitant to speak, their eyes darting nervously when the address was mentioned, and I could sense the weight of history pressing down on the street itself. The Amityville house had become infamous worldwide, a place where tragedy and terror intersected, and as I walked up the walkway, the stories I had read and heard seemed to take on a life of their own, curling around the very air I breathed. The house had a dark history long before its fame. In November 1974, Ronald DeFeo Jr. shot and killed 6 members of his family in the home, a crime that shocked the nation. The sheer horror of the murders left an indelible mark not just on the family, but on the property itself. When the Lutz family moved in a year later, hoping for a fresh start, they reportedly experienced a series of terrifying and inexplicable events that have since become legendary. I could almost feel the lingering fear as I stepped onto the porch, imagining the walls absorbing grief and anger, creating an atmosphere that no ordinary renovation could erase. Inside, the house felt disorienting. The rooms, though furnished in typical 1970s style, seemed charged with energy. I could sense the subtle vibrations of a space that had witnessed intense human emotion, grief, rage, and fear. The Lutzes reported doors opening on their own, strange odors, cold spots, and even supernatural sightings that made daily life unbearable. Standing in the living room, I could imagine the panic of waking up to noises with no discernible source, or the suffocating sense of being watched when alone. Even skeptics have acknowledged that the house carries an unusual atmosphere that is difficult to explain. Walking through the corridors, I tried to picture the Lutz family adjusting to their new life, hoping for safety, and instead being confronted by phenomena that challenged their understanding of reality. The sense of being observed, the whispers in the corners, and fleeting glimpses of shadowy forms would be enough to unsettle anyone. I could almost hear the echo of footsteps on the creaking wooden floors, feel the tension in the walls, and understand why they left after just 28 days. The house seemed to hold on to its history, the pain and violence of the past lingering in ways that defied logic, as if every event left a mark invisible to the eye but tangible to the senses. Despite, or perhaps because of, its notoriety, the Amityville house remains a compelling symbol of both tragedy and the unknown. Even today, visitors describe an uncanny sensation when passing by, a shiver up the spine or an inexplicable heaviness in the air. Standing in the yard, looking up at the windows, I could sense a story that transcended newspapers and books, a story that was alive in the very wood, paint, and glass. It was a chilling reminder that some places carry their history in ways that affect everyone who comes near, leaving impressions that are deeply emotional and unavoidably real. Leaving the house, the sun had begun to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the quiet street. The atmosphere seemed to linger behind me, an invisible presence accompanying my steps down the walkway. The Amityville house is more than just a location, it is a repository of human emotion, tragedy, and perhaps something beyond understanding. To experience it is to confront the reality that some places cannot simply be inhabited, they are lived in by the echoes of those who have gone before, and the memories of what transpired remain, quietly shaping the perceptions and fears of all who dare to enter. The house stands as a haunting testament to the intersection of real-life horror and the supernatural, a place where history refuses to remain buried, and where every visitor leaves with a story etched into memory. 5 Leap Castle, Ireland. As I approached Leap Castle in the heart of Ireland, the thick mist rolling over the surrounding fields gave the place an almost otherworldly quality. The castle, perched on a rocky outcrop, looked imposing and ancient, its weathered stone walls and narrow windows whispering tales of centuries long past. Even from a distance, there was a palpable sense of history pressing down, a heaviness in the air that seemed to warn visitors that this was no ordinary place. Walking through the arched gateway, I felt a shiver run down my spine, as if the castle itself were alive, observing every step I took. Leap Castle is known as one of the most haunted places in the world, and standing there, it was easy to understand why, as if the past had left permanent marks upon the stone and timber of this formidable structure. The castle's history is dark and violent, dating back to the 13th century. It was home to the O'Bannon clan, but it also saw bloodshed from family feuds and political conflicts. Most notoriously, the castle contains the so-called Bloody Chapel, a room where enemies and even members of the family were allegedly murdered. Walking inside, I could sense the weight of countless tragedies, the stone walls seeming to hum with the echoes of screams that had faded only in voice but not in memory. The floors were uneven, the staircases narrow and twisting, and the air smelled faintly of damp earth and age. It was easy to imagine the fear and tension of those who lived, and died, within these walls. Exploring the castle, I encountered rooms that seemed frozen in time, dusty furniture and crumbling stonework forming silent witnesses to the centuries of human emotion that had unfolded here. Visitors and guides alike have reported chilling experiences, sudden drops in temperature, disembodied voices, and fleeting apparitions moving through the halls. Standing in the Bloody Chapel, I could almost see shadows flitting across the walls, hear whispers of those who had met tragic ends within the very stones themselves. The atmosphere was heavy, oppressive, yet hypnotic, drawing me further into the labyrinthine corridors despite the rising sense of unease. Outside, the winds whipped across the surrounding fields, carrying an almost mournful sound through the castle battlements. I paused on the ramparts and looked down at the ground below, imagining sieges, ambushes, and dark family secrets playing out over centuries. Leap Castle had been the site of both power and terror, and it was impossible to separate its architectural grandeur from its violent past. The experience was deeply visceral. I could feel the castle's history pressing on me, its stories embedded in every stone, every arch, and every shadow. The guide spoke of an elemental spirit, said to inhabit the castle, an energy that manifests as dark shapes or sensations of being touched, and standing there, I could understand why so many visitors leave with a sense of awe and lingering fear. As I wandered through the upper halls, the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the ancient stones and highlighting the irregularity of the castle's design. It was both beautiful and haunting, a place where architecture and history collide in a way that leaves a permanent impression on anyone who enters. Leap Castle is not merely haunted by stories, it is haunted by reality, by the weight of human actions and emotions that refuse to fade with time. Each room seemed to whisper its own narrative, from betrayals to violence to despair, and I felt a deep respect for the resilience of those who survived here and a chilling empathy for those who did not. Leaving the castle, the mist thickened, and the silhouette of Leap Castle loomed behind me like a silent sentinel. The experience was unforgettable, leaving a profound sense that some places carry their history in ways that are tangible, emotional, and impossible to ignore. Leap Castle is more than a haunted location. It is a living testament to centuries of human triumph, tragedy, and supernatural lore, and every visitor feels the echoes of the past long after they leave its walls. As I walked back down the hill, I could not shake the feeling that the castle had seen me as clearly as I had seen it, and that its stories would linger in my mind forever.